Sometimes a murder is not just a murder. It is a chain of wrong decisions, old grudges, and relationships that should have ended years ago, but didn't. The case you are about to hear tonight begins inside an ordinary family. A quiet father, a mother unable to let go of the past, a daughter caught between two sides, and people who all claim they were merely bystanders. But when money, revenge, and fear enter the picture, even bystanders suddenly become players. Tonight, we step into a case that, even after years, has left one simple question unanswered. Who was the real killer, and who was merely playing the role of the victim? On one of the days of September 2023, an incident occurred that no one expected. Ehsan, a 52-year-old man and the head of one of Tehran's major banks, went missing for 2 days, with his family and colleagues unable to reach him. As concern grew, his relatives began searching for answers. Ehsan's sister went to his apartment to check on him, but after repeatedly knocking and receiving no response, she realized no one was inside and contacted the police. Officers immediately arrived at the scene and entered the apartment. Inside, they encountered nothing but a horrifying sight. Ehsan lay lifeless on his bed, his body drenched in blood, bearing numerous stab wounds. The brutality of the murder was shocking, yet what made it even more unsettling was how unexpected it seemed. Ehsan's colleagues described him as a quiet, low-profile man, someone who kept to himself and gave no one reason to harbor hatred toward him. Professionally, he held a high-ranking position as the head of a major bank in Tehran, and financially, he was well off. Some even stated that he had never been involved in disputes or personal vendettas with anyone. However, the evidence at the crime scene suggested otherwise. The nature and number of stab wounds indicated that the killer acted out of deep resentment. The force and precision of the blows made it clear that the murderer knew Ehsan personally and intended to kill him with deliberate intensity. To better understand Ehsan, it is important to look at his personal life. He was 52 years old and had divorced his first wife, Sanaz, approximately 14 years earlier. After the divorce, Ehsan took full custody of their only daughter, Shada, who was 6 years old at the time. She lived under her father's care from then on, up until the events leading to this case. Sometime later, Sanaz remarried a man named Muhammad and had 2 more children with him. Sanaz later became active as a blogger, sharing posts on Instagram about her life and the love she claimed to have for her second husband. Although she did not have many followers, she regularly shared personal moments and emotions with the small audience she did have. Although Ehsan had remarried, he was still not living in the same household as his new wife. Nevertheless, his daughter Shada, who had now reached adolescence, did not appear to be satisfied with the life she was expected to have alongside a stepmother. Shada spent most of her time outside the home with her friends and showed little interest in her father's rules or behavior. Whenever Ehsan saw her returning home after being out with male friends, he would try to talk to her, asking her to stop these behaviors and focus more on her education and her future. He wanted his daughter to grow into an independent and successful person, someone with a stable career who could stand on her own. Ehsan did not want Shada to remain dependent on him forever. However, Shada, who had long been dissatisfied with her father's strictness, would hear constant criticism of him whenever she visited her mother's house. Sanaz repeatedly spoke badly of Ehsan behind his back, describing him as overly controlling and rigid, and claimed that it was precisely because of these traits that she had divorced him. Life continued in this manner until the day Ehsan's sister contacted the police after 2 days had passed without any sign of him. She informed authorities that she had been unable to reach her brother and that the situation had become deeply concerning. Following the report, police officers went to Ehsan's residence and upon entering the apartment, discovered his body. Further investigation revealed that Ehsan had been murdered approximately 2 days earlier. This raised serious questions, particularly regarding why Shada had been unaware of her father's death and why she had not contacted him during that time. These questions became even more significant given that it was others, driven by concern, who had ultimately reported his disappearance to the police. At the same time, additional evidence at the crime scene suggested that Ehsan's murder was likely more than a simple act of violence. It was clear that the killer had been searching for something inside the apartment, as the entire house had been ransacked in the process. This indicated that, in addition to murder, there was also a motive related to theft. What made the situation even more suspicious was the fact that none of the door locks had been damaged, suggesting that the killer either had access to a key or had entered the apartment with the assistance of someone from inside the home. Following the discovery of this evidence, police investigations increasingly focused on Shada. As the only person who had been living with Ehsan at the time, it appeared likely that she might possess additional information about the incident. Officers contacted Shada and summoned her to the police station. They asked why, even after 2 days had passed since her father's death, she had been completely unaware of what had happened. Shada stated that during that period she had gone to her mother's house and had no knowledge of her father's condition. However, the apartment's CCTV footage told a different story. Her explanation directly conflicted with the surveillance recordings. The footage showed that Shada was the only person who could have opened the door for the killers. The same recordings also captured 2 slender men wearing face masks entering the building and later leaving quietly after some time. These findings led investigators to conclude that Ehsan's murder was likely not the result of a spontaneous confrontation during a robbery, but rather a carefully planned and complex operation. From that point on, Shada's role in the incident became one of the most complicated and controversial aspects of the case, and has remained so ever since. Another detail that strongly caught the attention of the police was the fact that after the 2 masked men left Ehsan's apartment, Sanaz's husband, Mohammed, appeared at the scene. This development was both unusual and highly suspicious, as Mohammed was not someone who would normally have any reason to visit Ehsan's home. This raised further doubts about the intricate relationships among those involved. As a result, police moved to arrest both Mohammed and Shada. Both were deeply shocked by their arrest, but when confronted with the evidence collected by investigators, they were unable to deny their involvement and eventually confessed. They admitted that they had been aware of the murder plan, but claimed they had played no direct role in carrying it out. According to their statements, everything had been done under orders issued by Sanaz, and they described themselves merely as observers to the events. Following these confessions, police arrested Sanaz as well. During interrogation, once she realized that both her husband and her daughter had confessed, she presented a different version of events. Sanaz stated that because her ex-husband, Ehsan, had been excessively strict with Shada and had harassed her over her outings, she had decided to punish him. To do so, she claimed she hired 2 criminals named Amir and Mohsen to intimidate and beat Ehsan, not to kill him. In her confession, Sanaz insisted that none of them intended for Ehsan to die, but that Amir and Mohsen acted carelessly during the assault, ultimately resulting in his death. However, Sanaz's explanation did not align with the facts. It had been established that Ehsan had suffered 16 stab wounds, something that could not reasonably be attributed to carelessness or an accident. Furthermore, CCTV footage showed that Mohammed had gone to Ehsan's house. This raised a critical question. Why had Mohammed gone there? Had he gone to check on the house to make sure their plan had gone as intended, and that Ehsan was indeed dead? As interrogations continued, Mohammed and Shada, while still standing by their earlier confessions, provided the police with phone numbers belonging to Amir and Mohsen. These numbers eventually led investigators to Amir's residence, and he was the first to be arrested. During questioning, Amir described how he had become acquainted with Mohammed and Sanaz. He explained that one day he had approached Mohammed to sell his car. Mohammed, who was involved in buying and selling vehicles, met with him, but the deal ultimately fell through. During that encounter, Amir told Muhammad that he had found an antique necklace and asked him to sell it on his behalf. After some time, Muhammad sold the necklace but never paid Amir his share. Amir claimed that in order to avoid paying him, Muhammad set him up and threatened him, saying that if he did not do what he was told, he would report him to the police for stealing an antique necklace. Up to that point, Amir's account seemed plausible. However, everything changed once Mohsen was arrested. Mohsen stated that Muhammad had found both of them through a mutual acquaintance. After they met, Muhammad told them that Ehsan, Sanaz's ex-husband, had been causing problems and interfering in his and his wife's life, and that they had decided to intimidate him. Muhammad and Sanaz offered Amir and Mohsen $3,000 in cash in exchange for carrying out the job, assuring them that if any trouble arose in the future and they were arrested, they would give their consent and resolve the matter. Persuaded by these promises, Amir and Mohsen agreed. According to the confessions of Amir and Mohsen, the murder unfolded as follows. On the day of the incident, Shada noticed that her father was asleep and unlikely to wake up easily. She contacted her mother Sanaz and her husband Muhammad and informed them that Ehsan was asleep. Immediately afterwards, Sanaz and Muhammad called Amir and Mohsen and instructed them to go to Ehsan's house as quickly as possible. Sanaz and Muhammad themselves lingered in the vicinity of Ehsan's home, monitoring the situation to make sure everything was proceeding according to plan. When Amir and Mohsen arrived, Shada left the door open for them and then left the house so she would not witness her father's murder. Armed with a knife that Amir was carrying, Amir and Mohsen entered Ehsan's bedroom quietly and swiftly. Amir delivered 16 rapid stab wounds to Ehsan's head and face. Completely unaware and unable to offer even the slightest resistance, Ehsan died at the scene. Afterward, Amir and Mohsen fled the apartment. Muhammad then entered the house to ensure that everything had gone as planned, and after confirming Ehsan's death, he left. He took Sanaz by the hand, and together with Shada, they returned home. At the court session held for this case, Ehsan's family asked the judge to issue a death sentence for anyone directly responsible for Ehsan's murder and demanded the maximum possible punishment for all others involved. During the continued investigations and interrogations, Amir stated in court that Sanaz had initially asked him to enter Ehsan's house and find documents related to the gold, which was said to weigh around 900 grams. She also instructed him to beat Ehsan a little and then leave the house. However, after they failed to find any documents, Sanaz told them that now, since their images had been recorded on the cameras, the best course of action would be to kill Ehsan and then leave the house. She threatened them, saying that if they did not carry out this task, the money she had promised them would not be given. At that moment, Amir, holding a knife, re-entered Ehsan's room and killed him. Sanaz, however, strongly denied these claims and said that she had never given them such an order. She stated that Amir and Mohsen had acted on their own and that she had no role in Ehsan's murder. Meanwhile, Shada defended herself by stating that she loved her father deeply and never wanted anything like this to happen. She remembered that after her mother's separation from her father, she had taken care of him for 15 years, always respecting his wishes. However, Shada explained that her mother, who hated her father, had asked her to send him a text message saying, "My father is torturing me so much that I've decided to commit suicide." Shada now suspected that her mother had asked her to send this text so that, if anything happened in the future, it could be used as evidence in court. Amir, in his testimony, also spoke about the final moments of Ehsan's life, which deeply affected many people involved in the case. He stated that when he was stabbing Ehsan, and as Ehsan was dying, he repeatedly cried out, "Shada, Shada, my dear, where are you? My daughter, where are you?" Amir added that hearing these words moved him, and he realized that if he had known that this plan had been orchestrated by Shada's mother, he would never have participated in the murder. He believed that Sanaz had never intended for Shada to find out about this plan, knowing that Shada would never cooperate with them. Muhammad, in his defense, also claimed that all these plans were influenced by his wife, Sanaz. He explained that it was Sanaz who wanted to kill Ehsan and through their daughter inherit his wealth. Muhammad claimed that he had never known that the murder was going to take place and believed that the plans were entirely Sanaz's own. Finally, the judge issued varying sentences for those involved in Ehsan's murder. Amir, who was identified as the primary killer, was sentenced to death. Sanaz, who played the central role in planning the murder, was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Mohsen, who had only played the role of an accomplice, was sentenced to 10 years in prison. And Muhammad, who knew about the murder but made no attempt to stop it, was also sentenced to 10 years in prison. Shada, who had facilitated the entry of two strangers into the house, was sentenced to 2 years in a juvenile rehabilitation center. This criminal case, with all its complex details, showed us that even in some cases, deep-rooted family relationships and unresolved issues from the past can lead to tragic consequences that no one ever imagined. In the end, the judge handed down varying sentences for those involved, and Ehsan's family demanded severe punishment for those who played a role in his death. This case shows us that violence doesn't usually begin in a single moment. Rather, it builds up over years through grudges, unspoken words, and postponed decisions. None of the people involved in this case saw themselves as the killer, but in the end, the result was a lost life and multiple ruined lives. Now it's your turn. Who do you think was the mastermind behind this case, and which decision was the point of no return? Please share your thoughts in the comments section, and if this case made you reflect, help us by liking the video so we can dive into more criminal cases together.